Hi, I'm Ryan from Amber Elm. Right off the bat, this video is going to cover a bunch of topics concerning Eurorack modules, semi-modular synths, and creating general ambience for your music. I'm going to break it up into chapters, so feel free to around. A few weeks ago, I got a Moog Subharmonicon and made a video exploring what it does, some of the fun patches you can make with it. If you didn't see that video, you can check it out here. But basically, my official conclusion was this thing is awesome. After making that video, I started to pair it with all my guitar pedals, different effects from Logic or UA console, but I kept wanting to use more of the functionality of the semi-modular architecture with the effects. So I decided to do something that I've been wanting to do since I started this channel and got sort of obsessed with VCV Rack. I finally started to build my modular system. Now, I recently took my son to see Gran Turismo, and if you haven't heard of it or seen it, no spoilers, don't worry. But basically, it's about the Nissan racing team going to find their new driver by picking the best racers of the Gran Turismo video game. In the movie, everyone is telling them it's going to never work and that playing the game isn't like the real thing, blah, blah, blah. But basically, this gamer guy has to learn how to deal with the differences of actually going, 250 miles an hour as opposed to just doing it on a screen. And while if I screw up a patch on my new rig, no one's going to crash or die or explode into flames. Not a fire! Racing stuff. It was crazy how similar I felt going from using VCV Rack to physically patching modules together. It's similar, but it's different. I can't control Z when I screw up, and you don't have to worry about cable length. And if you run into an issue, you can usually add a module to make it work. On a real system, you really need to be intentional about what you're doing and why. I love that I just compared getting a Eurorack system to potentially dying in an F1 race. Whatever, I think it works. So if you're thinking of going modular, this last couple of weeks has taught me something pretty valuable. Make sure you know what you want from your system before you go buying modules. The best way to do that, in my opinion, is really to use VCV Rack for a while, build out a realistic system, use it for a bit to make sure it's what you want first, and start planning your rig on Modular Grid, and I'll link the description below. If you've been into Eurorack for a while and have better advice than someone who's been at it for 2 weeks, please share it below in the comments. Anyways, the video I wanted to make this week was going to be about the Subharmonicon and pairing it with the Strymon Magneto and Starlab. But the more I made different patches, wrote some music with it, and realized how over my f***ing skis I was, I thought I'd do something that I find useful. And that's make a video using new gear from the perspective of a quasi-beginner. I think whenever we want to learn about a new piece of gear or how to do X, Y, or Z, we all default to checking out a video on YouTube for someone who is really good at what they do, has been doing it a while, and usually inspires us to get that new synth or module or write a certain style for the first time. And there's absolutely a place for that. I watch those videos a lot, and those deep dive videos are crazy helpful once you've sort of already bought in. But I feel like it's rare to see videos that show the process of figuring it out, and that's what I want to do today. And really quick, if you're enjoying this video, please consider liking and subscribing. That really helps the channel grow. It shows me that I'm on the right track in terms of content, and you can join our small but ever-growing community. First off, there are two ways I think you should approach making patches with modular. Both ways take time and planning. The first way is planning out sort of in your head what exactly you want it to do. Once you have that, you can get to patching. Sculpting the sound, figuring out how to patch it, and then tweaking it to your liking. And the second way is basically just exploring and being willing to let the sound take you where it takes you. This way takes more time, I think, but creatively it's really fun. And when I approach it this way, I make sure of a couple of things first. One is that I have at least an hour or two to explore, and that two, my DAW is ready to record. Not just open, but like tracks made, recording armed. All I have to do is hit R and I can record the patch. Maybe this will change the more I understand what it is that I'm doing, but for now I feel like I'm always one wrong step away from losing a really interesting pattern or patch that I've made. So recording it right when you hit a sweet spot is pretty crucial. To start my modular journey, I wanted basically an effects processing setup. The reason I went Eurorack for this and not just to compile more and more guitar pedals is because I like the idea of having control over as much as possible. So I started out with the Strymon Magneto and Starlab as sort of the focal point for now for the effects. I went with a Pittsburg Modular Taiga for the oscillators. I know it's not strictly modular, but damn, thing's awesome. I feel like semi-modular synths act as really good training wheels. Anyways, a Pamela's Pro workout, some LFOs, quad VCA and mixer, and an interface to get sounds to and from my computer. Now, if you've ever watched Christian Henson's channel, he talks about his Frankensynth. I feel like I have sort of reached peak Frankensynth in a way. I've got dedicated Eurorack modules mixed with semi-modular bits for sound source and other synths, handling things like MIDI and sequencing. And there are plans to upgrade it in the future, hopefully not the too distant future. But for now, let's take a look at how you can use this modular system to both add some great ambience to different instruments and tracks on the whole. Let's start with the Strymon Starlab. I was very curious about how it would compare to my Big Sky pedal. I've had the Big Sky pedal for a while now, and I am in love with it. It does a lot of different things really, really well. My first impressions are that it is better in some ways, and it's lacking in others. The Big Sky I feel gives you more options in terms of types of reverbs. Well, I guess I don't just feel that way. It does. It does give you more types of reverbs. But the Starlab gives you control over everything. That's the whole point. The Starlab is pretty amazing and deep. It has the standard dry and wet knobs, decay, and an input gain which you can use to saturate your incoming dry signal with like a soft clipping distortion. The big size pitch knob at the top center controls the size of the reverb, but also the pitch of the regenerating audio. I think the range is from -1 octave to +1 octave. The texture section chooses the type of delay and ultimately the vibe. And there are 3 options here. Sparse, which is a granular sounding reverb, dense, which is like a plate reverb, and diffuse, which is an atmospheric style reverb. And if you want ambient, it really washes the sound. It's really cool. In the harmonics section, you have 2 knobs, shimmer and glimmer. Shimmer shifts the pitch. Ooh, try saying that 10 times fast. Shimmer shifts the pitch. Shimmer shifts the pitch. Shimmer shifts the pitch. Shimmer shifts the pitch of the reverb signal, and glimmer sort of beefs up the signal's harmonic structure. Under the shimmer knob is a button labeled regen, stands for regeneration, and when you turn it on, it applies the pitch shifting within the reverb structure. And there's a delay section. The feedback is feedback, and the echo on button under it buses the delay output to the wet output and mixes it with the reverb signal. I'll leave the filter section alone for now, but I do want to touch on the LFO section. You can control the speed, shape, and depth of the LFO. And you can switch the LFO to target either the delay time, the pitch, which affects the size of pitch knob, or filter, which will modulate the cutoff frequency. And there are patch points all around the edges of this thing, letting you control it however you'd like. There are also other modes like carpless, I think I'm saying that right, that I won't go into right now. But basically it generates a string pluck and you can control aspects of that pluck. If you're looking for a reverb unit for Eurorack, especially if you're into making ambient music or you're like me and you just like using textures in different ways, I couldn't be happier with this unit. One word of caution with it, not even like a negative, just something to be aware of, is it can get out of control pretty quickly. So let's listen to it. If you have any headphones handy, I'd recommend using them. I'm gonna play some examples of running different things through the Starlab. I'll touch on the Subharmonicon, the Taiga, the piano, and maybe some other things if I have the time. I'll try to show all the different reverb types and I'll come back on screen at the end for some final thoughts. So for this first example, I'm gonna use the Taiga going into the Starlab. I had the Taiga mapped out to do sort of plucky things. You can hear how the filter sort of affects it. Also got some delays going. So using my Moog grandmother, I set up a little sequence. I have the Taiga patch MIDI in to the grandmother, and it's going actually out of the echoes out into the Starlab, and I have it in the echoes and not in the main out up here, because it's not Eurorack level. I think it's line level. I'll correct that in the screen if I'm wrong, but it's a louder output, so I use it. So now this is just 100% dry. There's no wet. And I will pan over to the Starlab so we can take a look. So I'm going to try to do this without making giant shadows or anything like that. It might be kind of difficult. All right, so I'm going to start on the sparse setting, which is sort of that granular delay. It does really well with these plucky sounds. I'll just use my shift in the middle. All right, so now I'm just going to introduce some of the wet signal. I've already killed some of the lows. And this high damp with the low pass on is now my low pass kind of cutoff filter. And now I'm going to make my LFO target the filter. So now it'll kind of move on its own. I'm going to add some glimmer. Let's see what the shimmer sounds like. Some of the patch points on this are really interesting. I'm going to take an LFO, a really slow moving LFO, and I'm going to route it to, let's say, the infinite button. Oh, let's move it to a square wave, so it just turns on and off. And I'll go back to the LFO in the Starlab, going after the filter. Now I'm just going to kind of play the Taiga. So for this patch, I'm running the Subharmonicon with a little sequence that's being clocked by Pamela's Pro Workout with the Euclidean triggers, and running through the Starlab on diffuse mode, and running through the Starlab on diffuse mode. I'll give you the dry signal, and then we can hear the. And it's just a really simple sequence. I'll kill that dry and add the wet. So another really cool feature of the Starlab, it has this car plus mode. And basically, it essentially sends a string pluck every time you tap this little trigger. And you can make the string plucks sort of strum if you control it with the gate. So it's triggering this little button through Pamela's Pro Workout. But you can also make it strum by using the in gate. So I'm using an LFO to make it strum. I'm sending CV pitch from the grandmother into the size pitch knob so I can control the pitch of the string pluck and strum. And it sounds like this. And now, if I want to use the filter, LFO on the filter, I can use the built-in LFO. It's going to be kind of wild, but I'll send that to sort of more of a sine wave. Yeah, dial it in so it doesn't get totally silent. And now the Subharmonicon's not even in the sequence. The dry is all the way down, so this is really just the Starlab. This patch, I wanted to try running the piano through the Eurorack. So basically, I just recorded a little improvisation, and I'm routing it into, which I think is off camera down there, is my IntelliGel Audio I/O, which is giving it to the Starlab. And the piano is running through a tape sort of warble machine. So this is just dry. Let's bring in some of the Starlab. And it's set to the dense mode, which is like the plate reverb. And this is with shimmer and everything kind of just turned off. It's just the plate reverb sound. Let's give it some shimmer. That's with a little bit of the built-in delay. Which you can tap to trigger. Let's try messing with the size. I thought it'd be nice to give an example of the Starlab doing something other than synth-tastical adventures. Because a lot of the music I write is kind of piano-based and a little more melodic. And I'm really excited to be able to use Starlab. I'll make a video pretty soon with the Magneto that's sitting next to it, because that's really fun with piano and other instruments. And right now the infinite mode is on, which is kind of holding the pitch of when I pressed it. If I get rid of it, it just starts to regenerate again. So yeah, this thing is really powerful, really amazing. Like I said, you start turning knobs, you can get kind of out of hand pretty quickly. From a quasi-beginner's perspective, this thing is a great piece of kit. Like I mentioned earlier, it can get away from you a bit at times. That's okay. I think my desire to be able to control everything sometimes leads me down the road of the sound sort of just kind of going bananas. But I find that when I patch it with intention, it spits out some pretty amazing sounds. Thanks for watching. If I didn't touch on something about the Starlab that you're interested in, let me know and I'll make another video. If you have any suggestions or corrections, please leave them in the comments. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.